fighting the culture of death at the state level. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our first guest up today is Pam Stenzel. She is founder of Enlightened Communications, enlightencom.com, also executive producer for Bright Course, provides training and education for pregnancy centers throughout the world, especially in the U.S. and Canada, brightcourse.com, and a consultant for Community Pregnancy Clinics, the largest network of pregnancy resource clinics in the state of Florida. Support CPCI.com. Pam, welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
I hope everything's going. Is our connection working? It looks like it on my end.
I think we've got you. Now. Go ahead.
Okay, so good. Well, it's good to be with you. And it's good to talk about what's important and what's going on the ground, especially with our pregnancy help centers and really reaching out to women themselves who are at risk for abortion. So
yes. Yeah. Nobody better to talk to about what's going on the ground than Pam Stenzel. We're going to dive in with her in just a moment. But first, if you do enjoy listening to The Simple Truth and the other great shows that are broadcast on the Station of the Cross, we do ask you to please support our 2025 Fall Appeal. Many easy ways to donate. You can simply return the envelope from our recent mailing or go to thestationofthecross.com or use the iCatholic Radio mobile app. You can also call in your pledge weekdays 8 to 5 p.m. Eastern at 1-877-711-8500. We do thank you for your generous support. And just to let you know, we do have a second guest coming up today, about halfway through the show. Pam's going to leave us, go off to her good work, and then we're going to bring in Nathan Lloyd, staff counsel at Thomas More Society, thomasmoresociety.org. That's going to be a very interesting conversation. He's going to share some work that he's doing, fighting back the culture of death at the state level as well. But Pam, let's start the discussion. I just want to ask you about the so-called Pregnancy Protection Act in Florida, passed and signed into law effective May 2024. So we're almost a year and a half later down the line here. Give us an update. What's going on in Florida?
Yeah, so I think, Jim, I started to really have to deal with looking directly at what's going on recently because I attended an event where it was put on by a diocese and it was all pregnancy center people that came to the event, which is why I was there to speak to them. But prior to me, someone got up and they talked about what was going on in Florida, and they were talking about how amazing this Pregnancy Protection Act is, and basically she called it an abortion restriction through 6 weeks. And in the process, she was praising this 6-week, she called it a heartbeat bill, which it's not really, because in Florida, basically it's a gestational bill. In other words, after 6 weeks gestation, you can't obtain an abortion. And then she went through the rape, incest, trafficking, life or health of the mother, in a sense that there would be some permanent disability or the baby's disability or anomaly. And so anyway, it was like how great it was. And I'm sitting there, trying to take this all in. And she literally said, you need to make sure you're telling your peers, because most of them support abortion restrictions. And most of them are okay with a law that just restricts abortion to a certain thing. And then, of course, Jim, the typical thing we always hear, that we have so much less abortion happening in Florida, and we should be, applauding that. And then she put a slide up that probably was the thing that really kind of set me on fire a little bit. She said, we've won the war. So now we have against abortion in Florida. Now we have to win the peace. And I sat there almost stunned. I'm like, you have no idea what's actually going on the ground. So basically, we've created a law that is unenforceable because we've said that you can't have an abortion after 6 weeks, except. The way that the law reads, the gestational age is being determined by the abortionists themselves. So the abortionist would do the ultrasound. Even if you still went to an abortion clinic, the abortionist does the ultrasound and determines gestational age that way. And then all that's required is either a police report or this or that, or documentation stating that the sex was non-consensual. So what they're allowing to be documentation it's like, let's say you're dating at 10 weeks. We can't fudge that in our chart at all. So I ask the patient, was the sex consensual? She says no. And she just has to sign a statement to the fact that she did not consent to the sex. And then that goes in her chart and the abortion can still to go on. So the amount of loopholes in our law in the state of Florida has allowed, semi trucks through. And then what we did find out afterwards is we knew prior to 2024, if you look at data from 2023, 2022, post-Dobbs, we knew how many abortions were taking place in clinics. We knew gestational ages. Jim, we knew why. We could say this was for economic reasons. This was for no reason at all, just convenience. This was because of rape, incest, whatever. We had all of those breakdowns. Well, all of a sudden, we had done in 2024 about 23,000 abortions that were performed were done prior to 6 weeks gestation. And then miraculously, when we tried to get numbers in 2020, or that was for 2023, in 2024, when we tried to get the numbers, they fudged. They first said it was 50-some thousand of the abortions, because there were over 60,000 abortions that still happened after May 24th, 2024. This massive number was done prior to 6 weeks, and it almost doubled. And now they're not reporting those numbers at all. So now I've had to go to ACA and send information records request, a public information records request, and say, we want to know your data, your breakdown on gestational age. We want to know the reasons that 64,000 women obtained an abortion in 2024 in the state of Florida. And I think the other thing, Jim, they were praising this 12,000 abortion reduction, but it didn't take into consideration that prior to May of 2024, in 2023, we had 14,000 out-of-state abortions. So they would number the amount of women that came to Florida specifically to have an abortion, and we were an abortion destination. Florida was. Women were coming from Texas and Georgia and all over the country coming to Florida to obtain abortions. So all these numbers don't make sense. And to claim that we've won the war and abortion, we've severely restricted or abortions have lowered in Florida is really not really fair when you look at the numbers. And then I ask all of my pregnancy center, the people there that were all operate pregnancy centers. And I said, has any abortion clinic in the state of Florida, private or Planned Parenthood, have any of them shut down? It is literally amazing that we have not had one closure of a private abortion facility in the state of Florida since May of 2024. And as far as I know, there have not been any abortion providing Planned Parenthoods that have shut down at all. And so if anybody from Florida can say, oh no, our abortion clinic shut down, I mean, because of this, I would like to hear that. But we only had one shutdown in Pensacola, and that was for a lot of violations, medical violations that they were able to get that doctor on. And so that clinic where Dr. William Lyle is ended up shutting down. But that was years before this anyway. So we've had almost zero closures of abortion facilities in the state of Florida since May of 2024. And then I asked the sidewalk counselors, spoke to many of them. What are you seeing on the sidewalk? Is it slower? And a lot of them, I just talked to someone 2 days ago from Orlando area, and they're like, we have never seen this abortion clinic as busy as it is now. The other thing we're seeing is that women are in a massive amount of fear, rushing to the abortion clinic without getting a consult, without, they're rushing to abortion without stopping and coming to see us first. We used to be able to say, hey, you've got time. You need to think about this decision. Please come and get a consult, see us, get an ultrasound, make sure that you have all of the information so you can make an informed decision about choosing abortion. That's not being done. We're having a desperate hard time getting the girls to come in and see us. And the primary problem, the biggest problem we have is massive amount of chemical abortion drugs being mailed into the state of Florida. I mean, and there's zero accounting. When you ask ACA for their abortion numbers, the only abortion numbers they're going to give you are women who had abortions in abortion facilities and abortion clinic. You're not going to see one not one of those stats are the women who are receiving those abortion pills through the mail. Too little, just incidental, but we're hearing it from every pregnancy center. Our girls are ordering these pills via the mail. They are never having an ultrasound. We don't know who's got these drugs. We don't know how they're not given proper instructions. If they've never had an ultrasound, there's no way you can know, A, if they're even pregnant, B, you don't even know how far along they are. Are they 10 weeks, 30 weeks, 40 weeks? We don't have any idea. We've not done an ultrasound.
Yeah, Pam Stenzel is with us. We're going to talk more about this when we come back from the break. There's a lot to dive into here. Pam laying out really a very clear cause for concern. In fact, a lot of bad news here. All right, the fact that the law in Florida, it was billed to be this great pro-life victory. Unfortunately, it's actually not being enforced. And in fact, it's almost impossible to enforce it because the enforcement mechanism itself in the law that was written into the law is flawed. It's relying on the abortion provider themselves to be the enforcement mechanism, which makes absolutely no sense. Is this being changed? Is there being any correction from the DeSantis administration? We're not seeing any at this time. We know that we have alerted them to this. We're going to ask Pam some more questions on this when we get back. Stay tuned.
Introducing iCatholic Mobile, a mobile phone service that keeps you connected while supporting your faith. With every call, text, or web browse, a portion of your plan helps sustain the mission of the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network to spread the truth, defend the unborn, and strengthen souls. More info at iCatholicMobile.com. iCatholic Mobile underwrites for the Station of the Cross.
Back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Pam Stenzel, our guest, for another segment here. Enlightencom.com to reach out to Pam. We're going to dive back in a moment, but if you are buying or selling a home, there's an easy way to help the Station of the Cross at the same time. Real Estate for Life has 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the U.S. and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered, experienced realtor near you, and don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross. All right, Pam, you mentioned in that first segment in the beginning there that you were at a diocesan event, and somebody, did you say that it was somebody from a parish or something that was, were they presenting and saying that we have won the war in terms of pro-life in the state of Florida? That's certainly not correct, right? We're smack dab in the middle of this war against the culture of death in Florida. Now is the time to really to advance. We should be pushing back this darkness with everything we've got. Pam, as you see it, how should the church and pro-life leaders in the state of Florida be responding differently right now?
Well, I think part of the reason that this particular person worked on the no on Amendment 4, and you probably remember that the Florida Catholic bishops really came out with this whole, it's too extreme. That's how they came on it. They weren't really on board with the do no harm part. It was it's too extreme. It's too extreme. It's too extreme. And I said, here's the problem. They were using the same language the other side was using. The other side was calling a 6-week ban too extreme. And now they're calling, the passage of Amendment 4 would have brought about a too extreme situation where we would have abortion on demand for any reason with no restrictions all the way up to birth. So you have to be really enveloped in the movement, Jim, to understand why there were a lot of us who believe that the only answer to abortion ending, if that's what, if your goal is to not have abortion, that the only real answer is personhood, to acknowledge the personhood of every human being from fertilization until natural death. And the problem is there was no support for that. We've heard Florida forever. There's no support for that. They're just like, no, we just have to put these restrictions. We just have to make laws that make it harder for women to get an abortion or restrict certain age limits or whatever. But the problem is when that's your goal And what you're basing your decisions about law on are what the popular opinion is, because that's really what you keep hearing. Well, 63% or 70% of even when people believe that there should be some restrictions on abortion, that it should be okay in the case of rape, that it should, all of these things. So they're saying this is what the general population believes. And so therefore we can't fight for personhood. We can't advance personhood because people will only accept politically these restrictions. And I guess, Jim, for me, that's really hard to swallow because I've been fighting for personhood for decades. And I've been told by the pro-life establishment that they would come back and fix it later, that this is the best we can do. And don't you want some babies or most babies to be saved, Pam, even if we can't save 100%? What if we can save 95%? And they would give these huge inflated numbers of how many babies would be saved by the legislation they were promoting. And in the reality, we never saw those numbers actually the case in law. So, and you, Jim, you know this, right after Dobbs went down, other organizations, pro-life organizations like Live Action and some others started to say, the new North Star is personhood. The new North Star is equal protection, all of these things. But the reality is it never gets played out. And when you're telling the vast majority of people in the pews who aren't involved in the debate, they're not involved on the ground, they're not reaching out to women in crisis. They're just, they just go to mass every week and, whatever it is. And when you're telling them, hey, you should be excited, we won the war, we have this law that you're going to love because it still allows abortion for these people and these babies, but we don't allow abortion, up to 15 weeks and beyond, and because they feel pain or whatever. And we should feel good about that. And then share information that makes it seem like we've saved thousands upon thousands of babies, when in fact that's probably not really the case. Then for me, the message, you can't say that to pregnancy center workers because we know better. But if you're saying that to the masses and to just your common people sitting in the pew, they're going to believe that you won the war. And it just frustrates me to no end. But that said, the other thing is it makes people believe, oh, we've done enough. We don't need another. DeSantis doesn't have to enforce it. We don't have to do any of these things we're calling for, Jim, because, hey, we did it right in Florida. It's great. Let's everybody cheer and kumbaya. And now let's win the peace. I don't even know what that means. So, that kind of messaging is very frustrating to me. And the other thing is we haven't begun in any level, no matter what kind of law your state passed that you are calling pro-life, even without the restrictions and the exceptions in the law, the reality is we're not really doing very much to deal with the absolute flood of these medical chemicals, pill abortions that are coming into all of our states. And nothing's being done. Texas is finally... they're actually prosecuting. They just announced 2 weeks ago they're prosecuting a woman for a violation of that law, who was a midwife who was performing abortions. The attorneys general of Arkansas, we have a few other AGs trying to push back on these shield laws to say if you're going to ship your abortion pills from New York or Massachusetts or wherever else into our state where that's illegal, we need to be able to charge. And do something about those doctors. Because the reality is I had a girl at the University of Florida clinic recently. She went to a local abortion clinic. She was 10 weeks along via ultrasound at the abortion clinic. To get a chemical abortion at that Gainesville abortion clinic was going to cost her $450 because she had to pay for the doctor. She had to pay for the ultrasound beyond just paying for the meds, right? And then the abortionist said, we're not going to do it here because your 10 weeks gestation, and then gave her, literally handed her a link to this Massachusetts abortion provider that was going to send her the abortion pills for $5. We can show you how in Florida you can get the abortion pill from these out-of-state providers for anywhere between $5 and less than $100, like $70, $75. So why, Jim, would I, as a woman, a college student, a young woman, go and pay Planned Parenthood or this private abortion facility in Florida $480 or more to get me the abortion pill when I can just get up behind my phone and my mobile, and just go online and just have these drugs sent directly to me. And the other problem with that is what we're seeing a massive damage to women. There was a reason we required a doctor. There was a reason we required oversight. There was a reason we required an ultrasound prior to taking these drugs, because they're dangerous. These drugs, it is more dangerous to that woman's health to take these chemical abortion drugs than it is to have a surgical abortion. A surgical abortion is safer for the woman than these drugs. And yet, and all of that information is now coming out. APLOG just put out an amazing white paper on the sepsis risk and the infection risk and the hemorrhage and even life risk of these abortion pills. And they certainly should not be taken if you're beyond 10 weeks gestation, right? And they certainly should not be taken if you have an ectopic pregnancy. That can only be diagnosed through an ultrasound. And so we're putting these women at horrible risk. My good friend, Dr. Brent Bowles, he's the head of the Abortion Pill Reversal Network for the country, actually is a hospitalist OBGYN who lives in Tampa. He's my neighbor, and he works at St. Joseph's Women's Hospital, St. Joseph Women's Hospital in Tampa. And they are seeing literally 2 to 3 women every week in the ER with hemorrhaging and possible sepsis and massive problems as a result of taking these drugs. But the online abortion clinic that sent them the drugs tells them, don't tell the ER. If you have to go to the ER, don't tell them what you took. They aren't going to be able to find out. And he said, for some of these women, it's taking them over an hour to figure out what's really going on to get them the life-saving help that they need. And this is one emergency room in one city in the state of Florida that's seeing this increase in these women. And it's never recorded because they're not admitting what they did. The women are not admitting that they took these drugs, and they're being told specifically by the abortion industry not to admit it. And so it goes on as it goes down as a miscarriage. So there's so much work we need to do, and forcing these REMS to come back, forcing the FDA to put those REMS back in that the Biden administration made permanent after COVID, and make sure that women are getting adequate medical help and consult before they take these very dangerous drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you also point to lessons that Florida should learn from Arkansas and Texas. And then ultimately, look, the end game here is personhood, right? This is how we abolish this ongoing daily mass murder, not just in the state of Florida, but nationwide. And so we go to the 14th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, to the Equal Protection Clause there, that speaks of it very clearly. We can go to the Florida Constitution as well, which reads as follows: all natural persons are equal before the law and have inalienable rights, including the right to enjoy and defend life. And when these words were added to the state constitution in 1968, the term natural person simply meant any living human being. And by the way, the Florida Supreme Court has tipped their hand. I'm reading an article right here from thehill.com, which the headline is Florida Supreme Court signals readiness to rule for preborn personhood. This is from April 2024. This is written by Josh Craddock, who runs it down, how they've tipped their hand and have made it very clear how ready they are to rule on personhood. Why hasn't a case reached them yet on this? There's one very easy way to do it, and that is if Governor DeSantis would simply sign an executive order for preborn personhood, stating explicitly what how he's interpreting the Supreme Court here. Or I'm sorry, the Supreme Court of Florida, and how he's interpreting the Florida Constitution. That would trigger the Florida Supreme Court to have to deal with this question and answer it. And I think it's very clear they'd come down on the right side of it. We could abolish this child murder in the state of Florida. Pam, we do have a long way to go, it seems, from getting there, even though the steps are right there before us so clear. But the pro-life movement, who should be the ones calling for this, demanding it, they're silent on this. They're saying things like, we've won the war. What can we do to activate the pro-life movement leaders, specifically in the state of Florida, but nationwide?
Well, we have to be honest. We can't let them get away with that kind of lies and those statements. We've got to say, we have not won the war. We haven't close to won. This is the reality of what's going on the ground. This is the reality of women who are getting abortions and babies who are dying and women who are being harmed every single day. And until you take take care of that, then you have not won any war at all. And I think our bishops, our priests are afraid to speak clearly on these issues because they feel like, hey, the people sitting in my pew think we should have abortion just with some restrictions. And so they're afraid to speak out. It's devastating.
Right. Yeah. There is no compromise here with this evil. We're talking about it's a scientific fact. Life begins at conception, fertilization. We are talking about real people, living human beings. We were all that size once. We cannot directly, intentionally kill innocent human beings. Why is it so difficult for people to simply stand up and say no more on this? We have gotten this wrong for decades in this nation. When will we come to our senses? It's for you and I to get out there, change hearts and minds one by one, especially the hearts and minds of pro-life leaders, to activate them on this. Pam Stenzel, thank you so much for all your good work. God bless you. And we'll be right back with our second guest. Stay tuned. Back to the Simple Truth. Jim Havens here talking about fighting the culture of death on the state level today. I'm happy to bring in our second guest today, Nathan Lloyd, staff counsel at Thomas More Society, thomasmoresociety.org. Nathan, welcome to the Simple Truth. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you so much for having me on today and giving us a chance to talk about all these battles we have at the state level.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, thank you for being on here with us and excited to dive in. But first, don't forget about iCatholic Mobile. It's the only Catholic mobile phone company in the U.S. today. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you do help fund the Station of the Cross. Check out iCatholic Mobile, iCatholicMobile.com. All right, Nathan, first, anything that you'd want to comment on from the first half of the show, anything that Pam said that jumps out to you, anything at all, feel free.
I think Pam made a great point that there is still a war actively going on the pro-life issues. We see this war on many different fronts. What I'm focused on is the attacks on pro-lifers across the country. Obviously, abortion has been removed from the federal level down to the state level after Roe versus Wade was overturned. But unfortunately, what we've seen is the states and cities even have interpreted this as giving them a broad leash to do whatever they want to keep the pro-life movement down. And it's very disappointing to see. There's good things happening in some states. There's some really awful things happening in other states. And so that's where we've had to turn our fight, is to the state level as opposed to the federal level.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And the federal level, I mean, it's still open. Congress could act. The president could act. There could be another case that could bubble up to the Supreme Court or get to the Supreme Court to force questions along these lines. But what has been unleashed, as you mentioned, at this point is these battles on the state level have really heated up. So we were talking about Florida. Now, Massachusetts is a very different state. I know that there's a case that you've been working on there in Massachusetts with Thomas More Society on behalf of Choose Life Marketing. And this is against a meritless lawsuit brought by an abortion provider for women health services. What can you tell us about this?
Well, we've seen Massachusetts open up as one of the hottest fronts in the pro-life movement right now. The state of Massachusetts is openly hostile to pro-lifers, which is very disappointing because the governor there is nominally Catholic. Of course, she's not acting like it. But we see attacks coming from the state level, and I can speak a little bit more about that later. But we also see the abortion clinics kind of carrying the mantle of the state where the state can't do things. So, for instance, of course, the First Amendment protects the right of sidewalk counselors to be out in front of an abortion clinic. You know very well what that looks like, Jim, given your history and your great work in the pro-life movement yourself. But what we've seen is that sometimes abortion clinics don't like those pro-lifers being out there, and they don't like the pro-life message either. And so what they're doing is, since they don't have access to the same kind of police authorities or health regulations or those kinds of things, the abortion clinics themselves are now trying to commandeer business law to sue and to prevent pro-life centers from being in existence. So what we're seeing in this case out of Massachusetts that you referenced is called For Women versus Abundant Hope. And our client, the Thomas More client, is Choose Life Marketing. What happened in this case was there's an abortion clinic right next to a pro-life center. And the pro-life center is there in a separate parking lot. They offer plenty of life-affirming services, free ultrasounds, all those wonderful things that we know pro-life centers do. And they're very effective. So what happens is a woman will hear about their existence and go there, get a free ultrasound and see her baby, and then not to have an abortion. We're not sure how often this happens exactly, but we know that it happens. We know that the pro-life message is compelling when people actually hear it. But the abortion clinic doesn't want women to hear it in the first place. And of course, the reason is they lose money. This is a purely profit-driven thing. They guise it in women's rights. A woman has a right to choose, but of course they're not truly interested in a woman's right to choose, or else they would be happy for a woman to hear about her other options. They want to keep her ignorant. They want to keep her a slave to her ignorance and keep her as a client and make money off of her and then just kick her to the curb afterwards. So what we're seeing in this particular case, the abortion clinic sued the pro-life clinic, initially saying this was an absolutely crazy conspiracy theory. They said that the pro-life clinic had hacked into their medical appointment system, stolen their client files, and were calling these women who would come in for an abortion clinic appointment, calling them before they could come to the appointment and misleading them and tricking them into going to the pro-life clinic instead, where they get a free ultrasound and then are persuaded not to have an abortion. And Jim, I think you probably worked with enough pro-life centers across the country. You've heard from enough. Pro-life centers are not the kind of people who are going to hack into a computer system. They're not fraudsters, not criminals like that. They wouldn't do something like that. And so, of course, come to find out, that didn't happen. What was really happening was that the pro-life clinic was so good at marketing, so persuasive on the internet that women would go to them first. And so the abortion clinic is upset that women are going to the pro-life center first and then not paying them to have an abortion. So it's just terribly devious. And so what we're seeing now, that the judge unfortunately let the abortion clinic change their story. So no longer are they saying that there's this hacking conspiracy. What they're saying now is that there's a violation of the Lanham Act. The Lanham Act is about trademarks and unfair competition, and also a violation of the Massachusetts Business Code. So they're saying that the pro-life center, which of course takes no payment for its services, everything it does is free, is somehow operating as a business and unfairly competing against the for-profit abortion clinic. And really the theory just boils down to, if you offer free pro-life services and a woman hears that message, she's not going to get an abortion. And so you've stolen our client. You've stolen our money. You've stolen our business. So it's absolutely, it's an insane theory. It's insulting, frankly, both to the pro-lifers who were always telling the truth, who are always telling the truth about life and telling these women that they have options, that they actually can raise the baby, that there is plenty of support in the community, that this is not their only choice, all these wonderful, beautiful things, that their baby is healthy, their baby is viable, and that they could be a mom if they wanted to go down that route. There's support for them. But apparently that's misleading. It's misleading to tell a woman that she can be a mother. So I think it's insulting to the women as well that hearing the truth is considered deceiving her in some way. So we're actively fighting that case. I was just up in Boston last month for the oral arguments on that case. So I ask your listeners to really pray for success there. It's a difficult court to be in. Massachusetts courts we're in federal court, but Massachusetts courts generally are not favorable to pro-life positions. We've seen this happen. Even the Supreme Court is aware of this. So when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs decision, Justice Alito pointed out that the Supreme Court taking so many abortion cases has totally distorted many areas of law. And when abortion is tied into something as benign as unfair business competition, judges seem to have this persuasion that abortion must win no matter what. Law be damned. And the other thing that we're concerned about with this case is the theory is that the pro-life clinic has an economic motive to give their free services. And if your brain is spinning a little bit, it should be, because it doesn't quite make sense. And it's very dangerous because consider this. Consider that there is a food pantry that's giving out free food next to a grocery store. If this theory prevails, well, now that grocery store can sue the food pantry for stealing their business by giving away free food when somebody should be buying food from the grocery store. Or consider another situation that There is a center for women who are in crisis. Maybe they've been kicked out, maybe they've been abused, and the center gives these women a free home for a while so they can get back on their feet, get somewhere safe. And imagine that place is right next to a slumlord who charges these women exorbitant rent and wants to make money off. Well, now he's able to sue the women's center, saying that the women's center is stealing his tenants that he should be getting. So it's really horrifying what this law, what this interpretation of the law could set up for Massachusetts. It could really undo basically every charitable service within the state. And of course, the Massachusetts is within the First Circuit Court of Appeals. So that's basically the Northeast, a large portion of the Northeast. And depending on how this goes, that could become the law of the entire Northeast. So I really ask that your listeners are praying for the victory of Choose Life Marketing and Abundant Hope in this case, that we can knock down this horrible misinterpretation and this concept of the law that is really antithetical to anything that's good.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone pray. And Nathan Lloyd is with us, staff counsel at Thomas More Society, thomasmoresociety.org. And so, it's hard to believe that this is a case that hasn't been dismissed, but that is being taken seriously. It's hard to believe that that you could lose this case. It seems like you've got such a strong position and argument here. At the same time, this also does expose some things that you mentioned. First of all, how effective Choose Life Marketing has been, as well as Abundant Hope as a pregnancy resource center. It's a great point for them. They're doing great work. And by the way, Abundant Hope, you can reach out. You can support their good work going to their website, ahprc.org. That's ahprc.org. And I've been there. I've visited. I've met some of the leadership. Just great people over there at Abundant Hope Pregnancy Resource Center, ahprc.org. And also that, look, at the end of the day, so much of this is about money for the pro-abortion side. You know, they have their rhetoric, choose the right to choose and reproductive health and all of this nonsense, all of these lies, and a lot of people buy it. But what does it really come down to? There's a whole lot of people making big money off of child murder, off of abortion. And that's really, when it comes down to it, what it really is all about. Now, in this case, there's also a former attorney general of Massachusetts that is involved representing this organization, this pro-abortion group for Women Health Services. Again, a lot of lies in that title as well. But Martha Coakley is her name. Why is this interesting? What can you share with us about this point?
Sure. Well, Martha Coakley, your listeners may be familiar with that name. She, as you said, she was the Attorney General of Massachusetts for a while. She also has a Supreme Court case named after her, McCullen versus Coakley. This was a case where the state of Massachusetts passed a law prohibiting where sidewalk counselors can stand outside of an abortion clinic, basically saying they had to be very far away from the entrance of an abortion clinic. So far away that, of course, you know this, the way that a sidewalk counselor operates is to have a quiet, gentle, caring conversation. They're not protesters. They're not out there to scream or yell or intimidate or scare or fight. They're there to talk. And the state of Massachusetts didn't like what they were saying. They didn't like them talking. And I'm certain that somewhere behind the scenes, there were abortion clinics who were losing money and losing clients because these people are so effective. And so what happened was Massachusetts passed a law prohibiting them from being close to the abortion clinics. And this wonderful woman, I've met her before. She is just so sweet. And in fact, she's one of the reasons that I went to law school in the first place. She was a sidewalk counselor and decided to sue to enforce her rights. She lost, went to the First Circuit, lost, went to the Supreme Court, and she won 9-0. Even liberal Ruth Bader Ginsburg voted in her favor, saying that this law was unconstitutional and violated her First Amendment rights. Truly amazing. So that's a big L for Miss Coakley there, but she's still at it so many years later, still trying to fight for the abortion clinics, still trying to make sure that women are trapped into getting an abortion.
Yeah, real quick, I know we're about to hit the break, but anything that they gain, the pro-abortion side, this For Women's Health Services, do they gain anything in the meantime while this case is ongoing? Is there any sort of penalty or negative consequence to Abundant Hope or Choose Life Marketing while this case is pending?
Well, it's much more difficult for them to do their job. They don't want to be out there and exposing themselves to greater legal risk. And just in case this case goes the wrong way. And I should add that the way that Martha Coakley sued, she has a claim to attorney's fees. So potentially she could try to extract thousands of dollars per hour of work from the pro-lifers. So it's really just truly despicable trying to bankrupt them.
We'll be right back with Nathan. Everybody pray. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest, Nathan Lloyd, staff counsel at Thomas More Society, thomasmoresociety.org. We're going to get right back into that conversation in a moment. But first, it's time. The National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood. This is November 1st, coming up soon in Boston, Massachusetts. So we've got the March for the men, 11 a.m. We gather outside of that Planned Parenthood Killing Center on Commonwealth. The march will then kick off officially to the rally site at 11:30 a.m., where we invite all women and families to come join the men for the rally there, featuring national pro-life speakers. The rally taking place at Parkman Bandstand in the Boston Common. Again, that rally is going to be 12:45 to 2 p.m. November 1st. November 1st, All Saints Day. So come join us. More information on the website, themensmarch.com, including prayer opportunity the night before, some time for some Eucharistic adoration, confessions, Mass, to prepare ourselves spiritually the night before. So come join us. We need you there, themensmarch.com. All right, Nathan, share with us a bit. I know you've got a good view and perspective on the lawfare that's being waged against pro-life pregnancy centers generally as well as anything else that you want to share about really fighting the culture of death at the state level. I just want to give you the floor to share with us now. Go ahead.
Sure. So there is a cultural battle. Something that I get a lot of fruit from, honestly, in this line of work is I view our work as attorneys, as pro-life attorneys, for these amazingly worthy causes and these tremendous people. It's an evangelization tool, honestly. So on a few occasions, when we've been doing cases against states or cities or even the attorneys for the abortion clinic, in the case I was just referencing, what strikes me is that when we are up there arguing, when we're explaining our client's position, when we're telling the court what our clients are doing, that they're out there on the street not to yell, not to chastise, not to criticize, but to have an honest conversation, to present options, to help women. I think it's the only time that the attorneys on the other side ever actually hear a pro-life message. I remember one case we were doing in Minneapolis. Shortly after Roe versus Wade was overturned, the local Planned Parenthood lobbied the city council to pass a law preventing sidewalk counselors from being outside of the abortion clinic there. And the city council was very, very pro-abortion, passed this ordinance, and we promptly sued to make them stop because what the sidewalk counselors do there is so important. And when we were doing the depositions and we were listening to the questions that the city's attorneys were asking the pro-lifers, it was clear that they had never actually heard somebody give an honest pro-life voice before. They were basically accusing the pro-lifers of throwing things at women, of harassing them, of screeching at them, of destroying their property, all kinds of awful things that we were just absolutely confounded. We had no idea where these questions were coming from. It didn't comport with anything that we knew that the pro-lifers did. And I realized that during that deposition, when the city attorney was talking to this sweet elderly woman who has been on that street corner in Minneapolis, where, of course, the weather is miserable every single day for the past decade, she was actually confronted for the first time with somebody saying, "Life matters. I love life. I love your life." We genuinely want our opposing counsel to agree with us, right? It's not that we just want to win. We want to convert their souls. I think about what St. Josemaria Escrivá said. One of the things he said was, out of 100 souls, we are interested in 100. And so when we're up there presenting our viewpoints and for our clients and telling the truth about what pro-life means, that it's not nasty goblins, it's sweet grandmas who genuinely want to help. That might be an opening for Jesus to get into their hearts. And so it's very much an evangelization opportunity. Back to that Minneapolis case, I think this case is a really great example of some of the privileges to do this kind of work and work for the Thomas More Society with so many talented attorneys who are so dedicated to life. But the thing that I most love is getting to meet our clients and hearing what they're doing. So after we won this case in Minneapolis, after the city was finally forced to rescind the ordinance and to let our people back on the sidewalk to talk to women, that very first day that they were out there, they saved a life in one day. And that's what matters. We're getting to meet these people where they are, tell them that there is a future for them, tell them that they don't have to have an abortion, that there's help for them. And that's quintessential in our Constitution, is the protection of the First Amendment rights to speech. And speech means to do good, right? We are given the opportunity and the responsibility to do good with our rights. And that's exactly what sidewalk counselors across the country do. They use the First Amendment to do good, to serve the kingdom. And it's such a privilege to be able to work with these people all the time.
Yes, yeah. Nathan Lloyd is with us, and so you mentioned a little bit earlier how this the pro-abortion side, this rhetoric of pro-choice, if that were true, if they really believed what they claim, then not only would they not be trying to stop pregnancy help centers or work against pregnancy help centers, they would actually not mind pregnancy help centers, because they want choice after all, right? The woman should know all of her options. Go visit the pregnancy help center and visit the abortion center if you really believe in that sort of choice as the pro-abortion side claims. Obviously, they don't actually believe in that. And not only do they not believe in it, but they want to eliminate pregnancy help centers altogether. What else have you seen in ways that the culture of death has not only pushed back, but they really want to eliminate any help that is available here from these pregnancy centers to pregnant moms in need? Well,
so I think back to our Massachusetts case, something that was evident from what the attorneys on the other side were saying was that this abortion clinic really believes that these women are theirs. They don't have this concept of these women have a will and that these women are independently loved. They are abortion center clients. Every woman in that area is an abortion center client, regardless of anything that she might actually be going through. They belong to the abortion center. They are their profit movers. They are their enterprise. And it's really despicable when you saw it through that lens. Another way, though, that we see these radical pro-abortionists eliminating choice across the country, this is happening, is the attack on abortion pill reversal. APR is tremendously successful. It has a great scientific foundation for it. And so many women have benefited from accessing APR, which is really just a progesterone treatment. This is something that women who are prone to miscarriage might have they might be prescribed additional progesterone from their OB. It's a very routine procedure. And it has saved lives from women who have taken the abortion pill and then regret it. A lot of times women are slipped the abortion pill by somebody who may not want them to be pregnant, consider an abusive boyfriend or abusive husband, or even a mother who doesn't want her daughter to be pregnant right now. They might slip them the abortion pill. And so there are medical options for these women to have that undone and potentially save the baby growing within them. And this is something that the pro-life movement is very strong about, and we're doing a good job telling women about this. But what is really horrifying is that in many states, they are either preventing doctors from telling women about APR or outright outlawing APR. So what does that look like? It means in California, we have a case right now where the Attorney General is saying that pro-life doctors may not tell their patients about abortion pill reversal, taking that option away from them and keeping them trapped in the results of an abortion that they don't want.
Terrible. Yeah, Nathan Lloyd, ThomasMoreSociety.org. We've got to win this fight. We've got to win this war. And ultimately, at the heart, this is a spiritual battle, as Nathan was alluding to. So pray and work. Certainly pray for the good work of Nathan and Thomas More Society, and follow that good work by going to thomasmoresociety.org. Support that good work, thomasmoresociety.org. Nathan, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your support, Jim.
Absolutely. Again, thomasmoresociety.org, national nonprofit public interest law firm championing life, family, and freedom, thomasmoresociety.org. God bless you all.